Hi everyone and welcome back to my Wargames hobby channel. Alec here. You'll notice I'm in my kitchen. The reason is it's so cold out in I've got a little office or a little room in my garage, and although I can put the heat on to heat it up, it takes a little while. And to be honest, this is only going to be a quick video, so I thought I'd do it in my kitchen. Today I want to talk about Muskets and Tomahawks, which is a set of rules that you know I like very much if you've watched any of my other videos. At the club recently, we've been having quite a few discussions about some of the interpretations of the rules, and there's a little bit of confusion or a little bit of different views about what constitutes close order, a formation, or an extended order, for example skirmishers. So I thought I would go through and give you my opinion as to the way I play it and the way we are now trying it at our club, and just to save any confusion. So if you look at page 10 in the rule book, here we are, you will see that there are limits to what formations can do. And one of the diagrams it shows is that you have to keep your troops within a certain distance of one figure. And the other diagram here showing troops in an inch apart. There are basically two types of formation. You can get skirmish troops and you can get close order troops. They're the two main troop types that you use. And the important thing to remember, and I'll read it out, is that there are two rules that comply, two formations. So units have limits on their formations to remain in the range of their leader and thus hear the orders. The men cannot get too far away from the one who leads them into combat. So we're talking about units here, we're not talking about officers necessarily. But let me read it out a bit more. At the end of any move, no matter what nature of the move, choose a figure from the unit, and all its comrades in the unit must be within a radius equal to the unit's movement distance, measured from the chosen figure. So it can be any figure. It doesn't have to be an officer, it just be any figure in the unit. This movement distance includes bonuses from traits, but not penalties or bonuses linked to terrain. And that's when it says see the diagram below. So there you've got a case where the man in charge there, he moves at 4 inches, and as long as all the troops are within 4 inches from him, and you notice that they've measured it from the edge of the base. There's been a bit of a discussion at a club whether it should be from his head, from his body, or whether it should be from the edge of the base, because some players have their figures based on bigger bases. So there is an argument as to, hold on a minute, let's just do it from the figure instead rather than the edge of the base, and that would solve that problem. But not everyone agrees with that, of course. But in the diagram it clearly does show that they're measuring from from the edge of the base. It looks like it the way that arrow is pointing. I think it'd be a lot easier if you measured it from the figure. Myself, that is my personal opinion, and there is absolutely no argument. In fact, there's 8 men in that unit. So you could argue that is that a skirmish unit or is it a close order unit? There's nothing to say close order troops can't spread themselves out, other than they're limited by how far they move. So they have to be 4 inches from the leading figure, which means really you've got an 8-inch sort of diameter to put them in, which should be quite easy for smaller units. Now, since I'm talking about skirmish units at the moment, not close order units, all skirmishers in these rules will be between 4 and 8 figures. They won't be any bigger than that. So if you look at the default measurement for all troops, it's 4 inches. But if you're a skirmisher, in most cases you'll have the scout trait, and sometimes you'll even have the native trait as well. So that means they can move probably 5 or even 6 inches. So it's very easy to spread out a unit of between 4 and 8 figures. Now, because I'm talking about skirmishers at the moment, one of the most important things to remember with skirmishers is they can go into extended order. Now that's when the figures are at least an inch apart in this diagram here, and you can see. So why would you not do that? Well, you would do it all the time, because the advantage of being in extended order is they're harder to hit. So it makes sense that skirmishers will always be in extended order. And if you look at the description they put in the book, you'll see that a unit in extended order, when all the spaces between the figures and the unit are more than an inch apart. Now, it goes on to say it will quickly become obvious that falling into extended order depends on not only the unit's movement rate, and thus its ability to distance itself from its leader, but also from the number of figures in the unit. No matter how hard you try, it will be impossible for you to fall into extended order with a unit of 16 infantrymen with only a movement of 4 inches. Now, since most skirmishers will be moving at 5 or even 6 inches because they have the skirmish trait, and many will have the native trait as well, it's easy to spread those out. And I think we found it a lot easier if we count skirmishers are always in extended order, and rather than have to keep measuring them, we do spread them out anyway. But if they're on sabots, of course, they look as though they're slightly nearer. It depends where you measure from. If you measure from the base, they're clearly, in this picture here, nearer than an inch. But if you measure from the head, they're about an inch apart. We've got a house rule at the club now that just agrees that anything on a sabot, a skirmish unit, is automatically in extended order. And since skirmish units are only, the minimum size is usually 4, they start off 4 anyway, and they can be usually, if you add more figures to the unit, can be up to 8. But it's quite easy therefore to keep in the extended order all the time with that troop type. As I mentioned before, there's nothing to say close order troops can't go into extended order, and I've certainly done that when my units have been depleted and they're down to just 4 or 5 men. Then I do put them in extended order to make them harder to hit. They wouldn't normally though fight in that formation. My recommendation is that you count all skirmishers automatically in extended order. If you don't want to have to keep measuring, I think you must make every effort to make sure they're well spread out. But what you don't want to be doing is measuring every single figure. I would suggest you have a house rule, you make an agreement that skirmishers are automatically in extended order all of the time. There's no reason why they wouldn't be, and that saves a lot of argument. If you use sabots, for example, here's a picture of a unit in sabots, you can see that they're very, very close. If you measure from the edge of the base, they're certainly much closer than an inch. But if you measured from the middle of the base, in other words, from the head of the figure, they are an inch apart. So you see what I mean? There's a bit of an argument as to where you measure from. We've got an agreement at our club now that because we use sabots, because we use, if you want to call them movement trays, I'm going to call them sabots. If you do use them to speed the game up, that's fine. And if skirmishers are on sabots and they are slightly nearer than an inch, we're still counting them as an extended order because it makes no real difference. Now, I'm going to talk in my next video about close order troops and the formations they can be in, the main one being when they form up. And when they're formed up, they can do, for example, volley fire, and they get a big advantage for being in that formation with regards to morale. But that's for another video. For now, that's it from me. See you again soon.